Never a good idea to go out drinking after bar close because you just don't want to go home yet. You know, nothing good happens after midnight. Remember that, everybody. Bruce Rivers, welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, your board-certified criminal defense lawyer. Board-certified because I'm tried, true, tested, and I try cases. I don't just hold your hand as I write a passport to prison. No, I'm your board-certified criminal defense lawyer. And so we are reacting today to Karen Read. And, you know, if you remember, Karen Read was tried in the state of Massachusetts. She was dating a Boston cop, and she was charged with running him over. They had evidence of a broken taillight found in his clothes, found in a bunch of other things. They had evidence that some of the witnesses say that he said, I hit him, or they had other witnesses say, did I hit him? So let's dive into Karen Read. And after they tried her case, a jury could not reach a decision. So it was a hung jury. And when you have a hung jury, guess what? You start all over again. You start at the beginning.
Big break in the case of a Boston police officer found dying in the snow during the blizzard. John O'Keefe was found dead outside of a home in Canton over the weekend.
And the big shocker, his girlfriend from Mansfield now charged with manslaughter.
Could I have hit him? Did I hit him?
That's what the prosecution alleges Karen Read told a friend after dropping John O'Keefe off at a home on Fairview Road in Canton, where he...
So, let's just talk about manslaughter for a second. It's a lesser of the murder charges. And every state carries a different amount of time. It's generally not life without parole. Manslaughter is the conscious disregard of risk, basically, in causing a death, not intending to cause the death. We call it culpable negligence or gross negligence. So if you're drunk and you run somebody over and you kill them, not meaning to, but just because you chose to drink and drive, that is manslaughter. My office partner had who, God rest his soul, he had a murder case up in northern Minnesota, and he was a trainee, a cop trainee, and he was with a woman who wanted to be a photojournalist. So she puts the camera up and she tells him, I want a picture of you with your dog and point the gun at me. So he did, but it was loaded. It went off. It went right through the camera and into her head and killed her. Now, he didn't mean to kill her. And he was charged with second-degree murder and manslaughter. And he wound up being convicted of manslaughter because, you know, really similar to the Alec Baldwin case in a sense. But he didn't have an armor. There wasn't anybody in between him. And so, but you're responsible for that firearm. And if you point that gun at somebody, not having checked it, you're showing a deliberate, conscious disregard of life and limb, basically. So that's what she's charged with.
Where he was later found in the snow. The courtroom was filled with Boston police officers and the families of both Read and O'Keefe, who listened as the assistant Norfolk district attorney laid out this timeline. He said the two were going out drinking at a couple of bars on Friday night before deciding to go to that home on Fairview Road. Read dropped O'Keefe off there early Saturday morning, did a 3-point turn, and left to go home.
So the defense's theory is that he was inside. He was beaten basically to death in the basement and then somehow brought back outside. I find it hard to believe that if Karen, I don't know if Karen went in or not. I don't know what the evidence was of her going in or not, but I find it hard to believe that she wouldn't know that he was inside the house and they were doing something to him. That theory just doesn't stick with me.
While home, Read's lawyer says she tried getting a hold of O'Keefe.
At 4:30 in the morning, my client is placing multiple calls to the victim in this case, to her boyfriend, wondering where he is, why he hasn't come home.
When she couldn't get in touch.
People stage that often in homicide cases, you know, to make it look like but that doesn't ring true to me in this case.
She went back to Fairview Road to see if he was there.
At the time, it was snowing heavily, creating poor visibility.
O'Keefe was found around 6 Saturday morning and later pronounced dead at a hospital.
She discovered the victim in the morning. She observed him lying face up, snow on his legs, eyes swollen and blood coming from his nose and mouth.
Prosecutors say red pieces of plastic that matched the missing pieces from the broken taillight on Read's car were also found at the scene. while the defense argued manslaughter charges are not justified.
There was no criminal intent. This was not some random stranger. This was my client's boyfriend, somebody with whom she was in love.
We were happy, having fun, laughing, just very normal. Her attorney.
See that.
This was my client's boyfriend, somebody with whom she was in love.
We were happy, having fun, laughing.
So you see them here at the bar. You know, they look like her arm is around him. They're enjoying themselves, and this is a kind of powerful evidence that negates the criminal intent.
Just very normal. Her attorneys argued that evidence being withheld from them will show the people inside the home are responsible.
Instead of finally investigating the people who had a motive to kill John O'Keefe, who beat him and left him to die in the cold in a blizzard, the prosecution has chosen instead to dig their heels in. This will not end well for them.
The attorneys have filed motions to get the phone records of homeowner Brian Albert and his sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe.
Why did Jennifer McCabe Google search how long to die in cold at 2:27 in the morning, 3.5 hours before she would have any reason to believe that John O'Keefe was dying in the cold in front of Brian Albert's house?
The defense argued.
That is a little curious. Wouldn't you agree? But you know, you don't argue your case on the courthouse steps.
Defense argues Albert, who has a history of fighting, attacked O'Keefe along with his 90-pound German Shepherd. The Commonwealth argues witnesses, forensics, and every piece of evidence to this point prove Reed hit O'Keefe with her car.
I'm just a little confused as far as are they in the conspiracy, or are these people sort of let out of the conspiracy because they say something that doesn't further that conspiracy? If they're all in the house, and Mr. O'Keefe comes in the house and gets attacked by a dog and then gets dragged out to the bottom of the lawn and left there for dead, then why do they all testify that no one came into the house?
What Reed's lawyers were claiming in court today is that there is corruption in this case that might include Judge Cannone. Alan Jackson, Reed's attorney, pulled out a text message that he says Boston Police Detective Sean McCabe sent to a reporter claiming that McCabe had ties to the judge. Reed's defense requested the judge to step down. She denied that motion and any ties to anyone in this case.
Now, this is just a juicy fucking case, no matter how you slice it. You know, you've got local politics, you've got cops, judges, you've got text messages, really weird searches at all hours of the night when, you know, somebody's dying out in the cold.
I've never interacted with him, and I certainly never have socialized with him.
If you look behind me, you can.
It's really something for you to make a motion like that with some judge. So, Judge, you need to recuse yourself because we think you're corrupt. Try appearing in front of that judge a second time.
Actually see the barricades set up right now surrounding the courthouse. It's all because of the protests that we've seen in the weeks leading up to this trial. Reed is accused of backing her SUV into her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, and leaving him to die in a 2022 snowstorm. Reed pleaded not guilty to the second-degree murder charge. Her attorneys claim she's being framed as part of a cover-up. The case has drawn a lot of attention, especially from supporters of Reed. That's why state prosecutors have put restrictions in place like that buffer zone that I mentioned. Some argue it's against their First Amendment rights.
Commonwealth is calling it a buffer zone, but they might as well call it a restraining order against the citizens of Massachusetts.
First of all, I don't know why the fuck you go down to the courthouse to protest anyway. I know there's a lot of people that like to do that kind of thing. A lot of people like to have their, free speech heard. But to me, I got better things to do. When you look at this case, from 30,000 feet, I think it's a stretch to say all these cops were in cahoots until you start to link things together. Like the search, like the connection with the judge, like the dog bites.
I think she's very unjustly been treated by the state of Massachusetts.
Karen Reed could be any one of us. Thank God she has the money and the means to fight this. But if it was us, one of everyday person, we'd be in jail by now, and you wouldn't even know about this.
What has this process been like for your family?
It's been hell. It's been 26, 27 months of hell.
She said, I hit him. She repeated it. There was a woman standing across from her who I believe at that point said, You're hysterical. You need to calm down.
Just something like, he's dead.
All I recall her saying was, is he alive?
Cross-examination of firefighter Flamati was contentious, as the defense asked him where he was in a video, why his claims weren't in a report, and what he said at the hospital.
You directly told the doctors and nurses that there was a question about whether or not he was hit by a vehicle, right?
Yes.
Have you ever said that in any context, either to the police or in a grand jury before today?
I don't recall.
Boston police officer John O'Keefe's family emotional in court today as the 911 call from the morning he died was played.
How many pieces of taillight did you find on or around that property?
That morning, none.
Reed's attorneys.
That is weird. Honestly. How would you not find any piece of taillight that morning?
Who allege a cover-up, also questioning why inside the home wasn't searched thoroughly that morning.
Nobody put John O'Keefe anywhere but where he was found.
The defendant kissed me.
And how did she kiss you?
Not like a friend.
ATF agent Brian Higgins, who had an office at the Canton Police Station, taking the stand in the Karen Reed murder trial.
Defendant responded, "You're hot." I responded, "Are you serious or messing with me?" Defendant responded, "No, I'm serious."
Prosecutors showing pages of flirty texts between the two.
And he said the feeling is mutual.
Flirty texts between the two. The same month, Reed's boyfriend, John O'Keefe, was found dead at 34 Fairview Road in Canton.
Not proud of these text messages. It is what it is. I take responsibility for them. But, you know, John was a friend at the same time. And if they were at the end of the relationship, they were at the end of their relationship. But I wasn't going to have somebody utilize me.
On cross-examination, Reed's attorney pointing out she didn't answer Higgins' text at the bar hours before O'Keefe died.
Well, why are you ignoring me?
It's not correct.
Well, am I chopped liver? So where's your phone?
I do not have that phone anymore.
You don't have the phone anymore? What'd you do with the phone?
Anymore.
You've destroyed that phone, haven't you?
No, I threw the phone away.
Well, that's destroying the phone, isn't it?
I had every right to do that.
I'm not sure if it's in this doc.
No, you don't. If it contains evidence of a fucking capital crime or a crime, you don't have the right to just get rid of evidence. You're a fucking law enforcement agent. You should know that.
Document, but I can tell you today with 100% clarity, she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
We need to talk about the Karen Reed trial because they might have a verdict tomorrow and I might need your emotional support.
Even housewives in their bathrobes are talking about this case.
Okay.
First, the facts. Boston police officer John O'Keefe was found dead in a snowbank outside of the house of another police officer. His name is Brian Albert. Very sad, very tragic. He was a good man. Karen Reed is accused of hitting him with her SUV and leaving him out in the cold to die. They were romantic.
We knew this. We knew this. So when you have a situation where somebody is dead at a party in the winter like this, a lot of things are going on, you know, and I've had cases like this, and everybody's usually drunk.
Romantically involved. The case against her. She was very drunk that night. She was seen at the house, but those inside of the house say that she never came in, he never came in. They saw the car out there and then the car left. Well, her taillight was broken, and there were pieces of taillight found all across the yard where the body was found. Small pieces of that taillight was found in the clothes on his body. His DNA was found on.
So he was probably hit by the car. That's the allegation. So they had a trial about all this stuff, and a jury came to a conclusion that they couldn't come to a conclusion. In other words, they hung. And so whenever you have a hung jury, guess what happens? They try you all over again, especially on a homicide.
On the bumper of the car, and two witnesses said that after she found the body, she kept yelling, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. This is my fault.
Not good.
Pretty straightforward case, right?
I guess she's talking to her husband. But it kind of gives you some overview of what the case is about. So if you have, but sometimes you have a case where there's no argument as to what the facts are. The argument is what actually happened legally. What does it legally mean?
Right?
Right.
Wrong, Brian. We're going to walk through each of these. She was seen at the house, but those inside the house said that she never came in. Well, what if I told you that all these people, these are all the people involved in this case, they're all in cahoots because they're married to each other, they're cops, they're all related, and they're even friends with the lead investigator of the case. There's connections here. The lead investigators.
So bias in testimony only gets you so far, especially if there's some facts to back it up.
Sister is good friends with Chris Albert's wife. Chris Albert is also a cop who's brothers with Brian Albert, where the body was found, who is married to Nicole Albert, who is best friends with Jen McCabe, who is a key witness in this trial. Also, this lead investigator said very inappropriate things about Karen Mead. We're talking the C word, we're talking the R word, we're talking all the words. While he was investigating.
All the words? What's the C word? Cute? Do you call her cute?
Investigating her. 16 hours into the investigation, after only talking to 3 witnesses, some of which were these people, he already said that she did it in a text to friends.
That's what cops do.
Like, he never went inside of Brian Albert's house. All of the people in the house that night, they were able to get together and have a full conversation before they were ever interviewed by police. The neighbors is also a cop. And the ring camera from that neighbor's house didn't catch anything happening during the time frame where this hit and run.
That's probably the biggest piece of evidence right there, is the ring camera.
Would have happened. But it did catch them finding the body the next morning. Where's that ring video? Brian Albert, the next morning, never came out of his house. How does that make any sense? Your neighbors are all out just finding a dead body and you just never come out of your house?
So one of the things that they did in this case is that the defense ascribed a motive to the prosecution, saying it was some of the cops that didn't like him that had him killed.
Sus. Pretty sus. Her taillight was broken and pieces of the taillight were found all over the yard. Well, this is crazy, Ryan. At 5 a.m. when leaving to look for John, she actually hit John's car. And there's actually video evidence of it. And that is the taillight they're saying is broken that ran into John O'Keefe and killed him. The car was taken to the Sally Port. And taillight pieces were not found as evidence in the yard until after this car was here. Why does that matter? John was seen in this footage around the car, and he was seen in this back corner for quite some time, and 40 minutes of footage is missing while people were in this back corner of the car.
Ooh, me thinks there is some fuckery afoot.
Well, I know what you're thinking. That's the wrong corner. Wrong, Ryan. That's the right corner. It was flipped and inverted to make it look like the back taillight was the other taillight. One of the craziest things, though, is that the crime scene was never secured. And these pieces of taillight, 35 pieces of taillight, were found over several weeks. None of them were found the initial day of the investigation. And the biggest...
So when you're sitting at home in your robe and you want to figure out one way to make TikTok videos, I guess this is the way to do it. But does it give you kind of a flavor for what the evidence is in the case? It kind of does.
Pieces of taillight were found by Inspector Proctor a week afterward. And there's no picture of these taillight pieces at the scene. All of the...
And why is that important? It goes to chain of custody of evidence. You know, and you would think that the defense could make some plausible argument that this was not the taillight or that there's a break in the chain of custody. And does that go to the admissibility or the weight of the evidence?
The taillight pieces, they found all 35 of them. There's no notes from any of the searches that went on of exactly where they found those pieces. Some of the pieces were even found by Brian Albert's cop friend, who was not on the case at all, but happened to be driving by the scene and saw a piece of taillight in the yard. But what about the taillight that's found in his clothing? What if I told you that Trooper Proctor had that evidence, the clothing, in his office for a whole week just drying out, and then he didn't turn it in for another 6 weeks? I mean, the chain of custody on evidence in this trial is just absolutely awful. Also, there was actually no taillight found in his wounds, and the DNA that's found on the bumper was a piece of hair. They found an individual hair on the bumper. Hair, the person that was inspecting it said they just picked it up with a tweezer and it wasn't like stuck or anything, and the car had gone through a blizzard. Also to note, they used red Solo cups to collect blood, and they stored it in grocery bags because they didn't know what else to do with it. Like, they didn't...
You know, you would think that a cop being killed would garner a much more detailed and professional investigation.
They didn't have proper technique, and they used a leaf blower to try to find evidence in the snow. This crime scene was a joke. What about I hit him, I hit him, I hit him? She has said to this day that she was in shock. She wasn't saying I hit him, I hit him. She was saying, did I hit him? Did I hit him? And she had this moment of like, oh my gosh, did I hit him? And then she was saying it was my fault, my fault. She was absolutely in shock in this moment. There were several other witnesses there that said they never heard her say these statements.
So you have two defenses here, honestly. One, I didn't do it. Or two, I did it, but it was an accident. And if it's an accident, there has to be, for it to be a crime, it has to be some appreciation for the, we call it mens rea, of what you're doing. You know, you can't just, if you hit somebody, you can be careless, I suppose, but to have it be a manslaughter case, there has to be what they call culpable negligence. That means you knew the danger of what you were doing and you acted in complete disregard. It's sort of like Alec Baldwin when you point a gun at somebody and shoot it.
There was someone that said that she did say, did I hit him? There are no police reports from that day of her saying, I hit him. That's a little weird, right? To have 0 police reports of all these people saying, she said I hit him, I hit him. That it's just left out of the police reports?
Very weird.
Jennifer McCabe is the other one that says to this day, she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Well, guess what? That was not in her 200-page jury interview for the grand jury. Never said it until recently. She changed it to, she definitely said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. And you know what? We need to keep talking about Jen McCabe. Jennifer McCabe searched at 2:27 a.m. how long to die in cold. They didn't find his body until 6 a.m. and they're saying that he was hit around midnight. How did she magically search this at 2:27 in the morning? Now, the prosecution did bring on an expert that has said that this could have been done in an open tab and done later at 6 a.m. But then the defense also brought on an expert that said, no way, there's literally no way that this was not done after 2:27. She then searched it again at 6:24 after finding John. Then she deleted lots of calls. I'm talking like 30 calls. 2 screenshots she deleted, and she also deleted her searches. She says that...
So deleting your searches and deleting your calls, for what purpose? Only if there's fuckery afoot do we do that, right? A man deletes texts from, his mistress. You delete your internet history because you don't want your mom to find out what you've been Googling or been playing with your wiener.
That she slept that entire night, but her Apple Watch data actually says that she was walking around all night. She also said that she saw Karen's SUV leave at 12:45, and they say that this is when she must have
See, that digital footprint doesn't fucking lie.
hit him. But Karen connected to John's Wi-Fi back at his house at 12:36. So there was no way that the SUV was still there at 12:45. She called Inspector Proctor's wife often, something like 60 times, other sketchy behavior by these people. The Alberts remodeled their house and sold it afterwards. And remember, the cops never went in the house to look at if there was any evidence there.
Right.
The Alberts also got rid of their dog, which I'll get to why.
Okay, that doesn't sway me at all. I mean, so what? Where did the crime supposedly take place? Outside, not inside.
Why that's important in a moment, but this was the family dog for a long time, and they got rid of the dog. Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, another cop who, by the way, was texting and having like a little romantic tryst with Karen Reed.
Convenient timing.
They also butt dialed each other the night of the murder. Butt dialed, because they actually answered and connected multiple times, but both of them claim they have no recollection of it, and it must have been a butt dial while they were both sleeping in their own beds. Now, some additional information from the defense. These are the lacerations that were on his arm, apparently caused by the taillight. A lot of people say this looks like dog bites. He also had a very large laceration to the back of his head. He had black eyes and pretty much no bruising to the lower half of his body. The physics of this injury and the crash that they're saying happened makes no sense. John had Apple iPhone data showing him walking and doing a flight of stairs around the time he was supposed to arrive there. So there are a few rumors and conspiracies that are not a part of the trial. One is that...
I never really like to engage in conspiracies because usually they're bullshit and they're hard to believe. They're hard to sell to a jury. But let's listen in.
Colin Albert, he's allegedly a drug dealer, and this is like a known thing in this small town, and he's a fighter. and that Brian Albert, the dad, is also a fighter. He actually is is a professional fighter man.
A boxer.
Professional fighter man.
A boxer. That's a good word for it. John O'Keefe submitted complaints about other cops and could have been implicating the Albert family in something. This is confirmed. He actually had submitted complaints. The dog that was given away was known to bite others. So there could have been a confrontation at the house in the basement that they remodeled and then sold. So what do you think, Ryan? Is there reasonable doubt?
But in any event, so April 1st is when this trial starts up again. And guess what? I'm going to watch this and we'll comment on it as it's happening. So make sure you get your popcorn, get your glass of white wine, because I know you all are white wine drinkers. No, not really. But, and we'll see you next time here at Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you subscribe. Follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, sign up for Patreon, go to CLR Bruce Rivers for all your merch needs. We're going to put more of Michael's art up there. God rest his soul. We'll see you next time. You're on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. When a judge talks to you like that, sit the fuck down. Honestly, you're better off saying nothing than continuing to lose credibility. Selecting a jury or the pool of jurors is random. It's not like, oh, I'm going to go get on that Trump jury. And I'm Antifa, and I'm just going to sneak into the corner. That doesn't happen. Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled Manhattan episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Today we're reacting to the trial of Donald Trump. With me, behind the camera, is our content genius, Michael Rivers, the man behind the plan, the man behind everything, who just got back from New York City. And the two of us are going to be heading to Portugal to go to Lauren and Jorge's wedding. So Lauren and Jorge, we're on our way this week. But before we get to that, before we get to Manhattan and the Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg, and Donald Trump, former President Donald J. Trump, we are going to be talking about his trial and kind of a little update on what's been going on. Before we get that, I make fun of my grandma a lot, and don't like to do it, honestly. It saddens me. But my grandma is so irritating, and she's just reckless. She just bought a Dodge Charger, with the Hellcat in there. I had to take it away from her. I had to take it away from her because she was winning all kinds of racetrack records, but they were not sanctioned, and so she was getting arrested and, street races. Anyway, so I had to sell it, and I went on to eforms.com to get a bill of sale. And so I was able to sell her Hellcat that Grandma is now mad at me for selling. And she's got cataracts so bad she can't even see. So she had no business driving this damn car. If you are looking for anything, a document that you need to do, legal document, don't hire a guy like me to draft it. Go to eforms.com. Eforms.com is a very effective way to draft power of attorney, which we have on Grandma. Eforms.com. Very effective way to avoid the high cost of a lawyer and a very effective way to avoid court. Protect yourself with eforms.com. Okay. DJT, they've selected a jury in Manhattan. We know that, right? And we also know that there's a gag order. And today they had a gag me order hearing for Trump. And let's talk a little bit about what a gag me order is. I say gag me, but it is a gag order. And when you think about it, they should really just call it a hush order, because if you put a gag on somebody, it's really not a pleasant experience. Have you ever been gagged? I've never really been gagged, but you see it in the movies all the time. And I think it's so funny how nobody can talk even though they can move their lips with a gag on. Anyway, a gag order is used by the court to ensure the integrity of the process, of the proceedings. And here's why it's really important in this case. Trump has a lot of supporters. But what the deal is that he has a way of intimidating people, intimidating witnesses, of creating a false narrative, so that and attacking people. And guess what happens when he attacks people? His people go and attack them, or at least that's the fear, right? I mean, we saw what happened January 6th, or was that fake? I don't know. Anyway, but so the court has the power to muzzle a defendant, or anybody else for that matter, let's say Alvin Bragg was out on the fucking courthouse steps every day saying, Trump's guilty, blah, 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 blah. And, and his witnesses, let's say it was reversed. There's no First Amendment right to talk about what's in court if it's going to affect a trial. The judge has the ability and the duty to make sure that the process is fair for the state and for the defense. It goes both ways. So if Alvin Bragg were getting on the steps and bad-mouthing Trump, bad-mouthing Trump's lawyers, bad-mouthing the judge, bad-mouthing everybody, bad-mouthing the jury, that would be sanctionable conduct. And so, he was, is there any truth to him being a snitch?
When?
I don't know. He's telling me he was cooperative and he's done all this.
Oh yeah, way back when. I mean, look, we're talking.
Keep going.
So here's what happened in court on this gag order thing. So Trump's talking about witnesses. He's talking about the jury. He's talking about all kinds of stuff that he's not supposed to talk about on the gag order. He can talk about the judge. The judge didn't put himself in there because the judge says, I don't care. But if you look at what the judge did say, the judge asked, that Trump's lawyer was talking about that this was political speech. He was just responding to political attacks, blah, blah, blah. And in all fairness to Trump's lawyers, Todd Blanche, he's got a really difficult job. And when you have a client that keeps doing what he's doing against your advice, it makes it almost impossible to represent somebody like that. I wouldn't give you 2 plugged nickels to represent Trump, although it'd be fun. I would actually like it. As a criminal defense lawyer, it would be fascinating. But at some point, you get sick of taking somebody's shit. And sometimes you get that. Sometimes you get a client who is just so ridiculous. I want you to do this. And when the client is asking you to do things that are unethical, you can't do them. So what do? You either put the client in their place or you withdraw. So the judge, Merchant, reserved ruling from the bench, but he appeared deeply unconvinced by arguments that from Trump's lead lawyer, Todd Blanche, that a series of social media posts were just responses to political attacks on Trump and therefore permitted. In other words, he was talking about Michael Cohen and he was talking about the jury and other things. And so this is what you don't want from a court. Mr. Blanche, you're losing all credibility. I have to tell you right now, the judge said it with us at one stage. You're losing all credibility with the court. Is there any other argument that you want to make? When the judge tells you you're losing all credibility with the court, guess what? That doesn't just impact what you're saying right now. It impacts you throughout the rest of the proceedings. And it's a bitch to get that back. So Trump is hurting himself. He may think in the court of public opinion that he's doing a great job. And so Alvin Bragg has asked the court to sanction him $1,000 for each violation that they've listed. So that'd be $10,000. Right after this, so they quit a little early today. And so the judge reserved ruling on that. Right afterwards, he's out there talking about the jury and other things all over again. He doesn't care. And so one of the posts that Trump posted was, they are catching undercover liberal activists lying to the judge in order to get on the Trump jury. And that was Jesse Waters from Fox News. I don't know where Jesse Waters got that, but it's made up out of whole cloth. They didn't catch anybody doing nothing. Trump's lawyers had an ample opportunity to question every single juror. And when you have a juror that says, I don't really like his style, I don't like his demeanor, but I can be fair, that's a juror that's telling you their bias, right? But you can have bias. You can have some bias as long as you can set it aside. That's the only thing that that any juror can be asked of. And Jesse Waters, this undercover liberal activist, selecting a jury or the pool of jurors is fucking random. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna go get on that Trump jury, and I'm Antifa, and I'm just gonna sneak into the corner. Fuck, that doesn't happen, Jesse. I mean, give me a break. It just, and so this kind of statement is the kind of stuff that the judge doesn't like, because it's not true. You're talking about the jurors, and the jurors can be under attack if it goes to their base, and that's the whole deal. You know, you don't want the jurors to have their safety jeopardized by loose talk. So one of the things that the judge said, because they had a hearing on this, and and when you're sitting there and you don't have shit to say, I think a better argument for Blanche would have been, he's in a campaign for his life. He's, this is, I think he did kind of say that this was political speech, but he's being attacked left and right. But this is what the judge says. You presented nothing. I've asked you 8 or 9 times to show me the exact post he was responding to. You've been unable to do that even once. When a judge talks to you like that, sit the fuck down. Honestly, you're better off saying nothing than continuing to lose credibility. Remember I told you that the judge made a comment about him losing all credibility. Well, the reason he said that is because one of the things that Blanche said is that, we're trying very hard to comply with the order, and Trump himself is being very careful. No, he's not. Have you ever, does the word careful and Trump go together in any sentence, no matter what? Or maybe he was careful not to let Stormy Daniels' secret out of the bag. I guess maybe that was careful. But when it comes to just bloviating, it is what it is. But, okay. So, that notwithstanding, yesterday and today, David Pecker testified. David Pecker. David was Donald Trump's pecker. And who is David Pecker? David Pecker was a CEO for American Media Incorporated, AMI, and or actually the National Enquirer. And he had final say of what went in the paper. He had the ear of Donald Trump. And if you look at all the posts, the covers, they were all favorable Trump. And then they would post stuff about Hillary Clinton that was, she's dying in 3 days and all this other shit. It's a National Enquirer, I mean, who the fuck reads that anyway? A lot of people, evidently. But, it sits there, right, as you check out, in the supermarket. And, no, in all honesty, who takes it seriously? I mean, JFK, the whole JFK thing, David Pecker today testified that they made that story up about JFK being assassinated by Ted Cruz's dad. Really? You made that up? Oh, who was it then? Was it Harvey Oswald, Lee Harvey Oswald. So, and here's, David Pecker was given immunity for his testimony. And in other words, so they said they were going to, remember Michael Cohen got arrested, he got charged, and he got convicted, and he did prison time. Well, for David Pecker, they said, okay, you're in the same boat as Cohen, but we're going to give you a pass as long as you're truthful with us. And keep in mind, when everybody talks about a witness and their bias, you can have like jailhouse snitches, like somebody who's your cellie, and all of a sudden he shows up on the witness stand. Oh yeah, he told me this, and this. That's somebody who might have a bias because they're trying to get less prison time for their testimony. Well, that's the case basically for David Pecker. They agreed to not prosecute him in exchange for his testimony. But guess what? Does that agreement stand if he lies? No way. No, it doesn't. In fact, if he lies, not only will he get prosecuted for the things that they said they wouldn't prosecute him for, he gets charged with perjury, like Alan Weisselberg, twice. And so, in this case, you've got David Pecker, who's their lead witness, the starting out, and they're talking about 3 separate hush money payments. One to Karen McDougal, who said she had an affair with Donald Trump. And then they were also going to do like some fitness BS for her in the magazine. And then you have Stormy Daniels. And both of these are, all three of these are catch and kill. And I'll tell you what that means in a second. And then you have the doorman at his building who said that Trump was having an affair with the housekeeper and had a love child, and which turned out to be not true. But they paid him. I think they paid him like $30,000 or something like that. And then they paid Karen McDougal $150,000. They paid Stormy Daniels $130,000, and I think they paid the doorman $30,000. And then, so what they do is they buy these stories with the promise to pay more once it's published. But then they never publish it. They just hold on to it. And so if somebody who is part of this catch and kill goes out and sells their story to somebody else, they have to pay the money back. So that's the incentive for them to keep it quiet. Why is Pecker important? I mean, why? I mean, can't you just pay somebody to shut them up? I mean, is that illegal? No, that's not illegal. What is illegal is doing that and then claiming that those are attorney's fees. That's really what happened here. Okay, Cohen went and paid some of this stuff out of his own home equity line of credit, and then so he's making the payments, and then Trump reimburses him in piecemeal, and then those piecemeal payments are disguised as attorney's fees. Those are false, and that's to disguise them, because otherwise they'd be taxed. Number one, but number two, it would just be a misdemeanor, right? That by itself would be a misdemeanor. However, the fact that David Pecker said, he met with Trump for like 2.5 hours. He said, I will be the eyes and ears of the campaign. The campaign. That is a big deal, because when you pay Miss McDougal to be quiet and you catch and kill that, when you pay the doorman to catch and kill and hide it, that is what you call an in-kind contribution for the campaign. That is a felony. It's a breach of federal law. These federal laws about election laws are, they have a lot of regulations about them, and they're strict. And if you do that, he's the eyes and ears of the campaign. That is illegal, and that is what Alvin Bragg is. So when you got to take the false business records and you add the purpose for it, the whole purpose for it. It wasn't to hide it from Melania. You think Melania thought Donald J. Trump was a fucking Boy Scout? Give me a break. I mean, she knew he was a Flander, absolutely. But you mix that with the timing, the fact that David Pecker is now testifying that he was the eyes and ears of the campaign and would catch and kill stories, and then they would hide it in a certain way. That is what this case is all about. Now, what Trump's defense, I'm just trying to figure out what their defense is, because I think it's their only real defense is just the motivation behind the falsifying of records. They're not going to have any legal work to show for Michael Cohen. You know that? That's a problem for them. Because even if you can't connect it to campaign contributions, it turns into they're all misdemeanors. There'll be 34 misdemeanors. But I think you're going to see that this is going to be easier to prove. It's going to be arduous because there's a lot of it. And so keep in mind, the whole purpose of this was heightened because of that Billy Bush tape, right? And that Billy Bush tape came out, and that's going to be part of this. The tape, it's not tape, but that the recording itself is not coming into evidence, but the transcript of it is, or at least the substance of it is, and they can talk about it. Because the reason that's important is because That was just before the election. And if anything more came out, it could have tipped it Hillary's way. You've got a guy like Michael Cohen, a convicted liar, felony on his record, hates Donald Trump. He's a never-Trumper. Well, that may be true. And as a witness just on his own, you wouldn't want him to be a witness on his own. But there's nothing that he's going to testify to that will not be backed up by either a document or a video or an audio recording. Now let's talk about one last issue. Let's say the judge decides to throw him in jail, meaning Donald Trump, because of this violation of the gag order. And, you know, I think Trump likened himself to Mandela and, you know, this ain't that. I'm sorry. He's not a political prisoner. This just is not that. If the judge does sanction him for 30 days and puts him in jail, where does he go? And where does his Secret Service protection go? The Secret Service has been in touch with the jail to talk about what happens if he does go. And quite honestly, I don't know what the answer is. Do the jailers go in and sit in the jail with him? I'm sure they would say, fuck that. I'm not sitting in that cell with him. You know, would they stand just outside the cell and guard him out there? Or would they stand outside, you know, kind of in a lobby area? Or would they stand outside the building? Or would they have to sit right in the cell with Donald Trump? I don't know the answer to this. This is, as they say, unprecedented. There's a lot. And one of the things, you know, the other thing that they asked Pecker was, are you the CEO of the corporation? Are you familiar with the business records and all that, you know, all that kind of boring stuff? Why did they ask him that? Well, that's because they're going to get a bunch of business records in, and those business records, you know, show the agreement, show, you know, the scheme, and they have to have foundation. And the person that can lay that foundation is somebody that's familiar with the records and somebody that usually you call a records custodian, but David Pecker will suffice just fine. So this is our little reaction to Donald J. Trump. You know, I don't want to see anybody go to prison. I don't like, you know, I'm a defense guy, you know what I mean? And most of this, like this whole gag order thing is of Trump's own making. You know, I think he feels like he has to do this and go on the attack for the public consumption. And I don't think it helps him. I don't think it even helps him with his base, quite honestly. Because he looks like he's whiny. But in a way, so yeah, Michael just said that, you know, he thinks it's a method of campaigning, and I think that's exactly right. Because he's not on the stump. A little reaction to Donald Trump, day 2 of the trial. We're not going to react to every single day of the trial, but when something kind of good happens, we'll let you know. So make sure you subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, subscribe on Facebook, and we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer. Literally, this just in, all 12 jurors have now been selected. So they've got 12 jurors, and they probably need, I don't know, I think that you'd probably want a half a dozen alternates.
That discourages jurors to want to sit on a panel. And
first of all, nobody wants to sit on a fucking jury anyway. I mean, everybody really, I mean, it's the very few people that say, oh, great, I get to not go to work and I get to not make any money and I get to go sit at the courthouse all fucking day until they call me and eat food and get paid $15. Nobody wants to sit on a jury.
Might not be able to take off one day to see his son graduate high school. Is it...
Okay, let me tell you something. You are charged with a fucking crime. You are charged with 34 fucking counts, all felonies. Do you think that the judge it's respectful to the jury to let you go to your son's graduation? Too bad. Those are your choices. Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, your personal and yours alone personal board-certified criminal defense lawyer. You know who you are. And we are coming to you with my pearl handle pistol cufflinks with the content genius behind the camera, behind the plan, the man who's got everything well in tow. What are we reacting to today? We are reacting to Donald Trump. And you know, we're not going to do Trump every single day, but when stupid shit happens in court and it's kind of funny, we like to, you know, highlight it because Donald Trump is kind of funny. He's on trial in Manhattan, as you know. What's he on trial for? He's on trial for the document case. You know, the election interference. We'll talk more about what it is. But this case is being brought by the Manhattan District Attorney. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But, I was sitting down in my basement talking to my grandma. We had to take her keys away. Grandma can't drive anymore. And it's not because she you can't see or can't hear anything. It's because, she's been picking up strange men and that kind of shit. So we made her sell her 4x4. She had a 4x4 and Grandma was just off the chain. So we had to get a bill of sale. And where would you get a bill of sale? Where do you think you get it? I tell you where. eForms.com. eForms.com is an effective way to get your grandma out of the 4x4 and get her into a more decent vehicle like a scooter that's electric and keep her off the road so she quits bringing strays home. eForms.com, a very effective way to avoid the high-priced lawyers like me, and it also is an effective way to avoid a courtroom because you get these forms done, whether it's a power of attorney or bill of sale, business agreement, any kind of legal form. You can get it on eForms.com. It'll keep you out of the courtroom and keep you out of my office because I would just charge the shit out of you and go to eForms.com anyway. And so avoid all that. Go to eForms.com if you have a need for any kind of legal form whatsoever. Okay, that being said, Grandma, I know you're watching. Stay put. Okay. So, Donald Trump was complaining the other day about strikes. He bitches and moans about everything. One of the things that you have to deal with when you're being charged with a crime are the rules that govern the procedures. Well, this is what he says. I thought strikes were supposed to be unlimited when we were picking our jury. I was told we only had 10. Not nearly enough when we were purportedly given the second worst venue in the country. We're going to talk about being given the worst venue in the country. But let's talk about it a little bit. So when you have jury selection, it's a process called voir dire. Some people call it voir dire, depending upon what part of the country you're from. But that is you get two kinds of strikes. You do get an unlimited number of strikes for cause. They have to be for a cause. Anybody who says they can't be fair, who says they're biased, either one way or the other, there's just an unlimited number of those. Because if you can't be fair, you shouldn't be allowed to sit on a jury. So to the extent that you get unlimited for cause strikes, Trump knows that. But preemptory challenges are challenges where you can kick anybody off the jury for any or no reason except for if they're black, white, Asian, race reason, or, their religion, or one of the protected classes. So, and in New York, you get 10 aside. In Minnesota, you get 5 and 3. The state gets 5, or the defense gets 5, the state gets 3. So you get more than the government does. In this case, they get 10, and they've already used 6 of them. And by the time this is going to air, they probably will have used more. But so they only have like 4 left. And they've selected, I think, 7 jurors so far. But he complains about everything. Now let's talk about the statement that they were given the worst venue, second worst venue in the country. What's venue? Do you know what venue is, Donnie boy? Do you know what venue is? How about Lena Haba? Look at this video from Lena Haba. We're going to play this here real quick.
Sure. Thank you. I think that we're seeing a painful, unfortunately, selection because we're in the state of New York, which is definitely by design. There is no question that Bragg bringing this in New York, look at the Fulton County DA and so on and so forth, Washington, D.C. These venues are selected exactly for this reason, Martha, so that they have a blue state with a blue pool.
All right, so we're talking about venue.
The term refers to the geographic specification of the proper court or courts. Accordingly, the whole point of Section 1391, the General Federal Venue Statute, is to set forth rules governing the exact court or courts in which a lawsuit may be brought.
And we're talking about Alina Haba. I don't often make fun of lawyers, But when you don't know what the fuck you're talking about and you're kind of an idiot because you've never tried a case in your life and you make the dumbest statements on the planet, first of all, I think it is tough for Donald Trump to get a fair trial in New York. I just do. But anybody that's overtly unfair is not going to be able to sit on the jury. And they get a chance to question him. And he does get an unlimited strikes for cause. Okay? But let's listen to Alina Haba.
Great to have you back on the program. Based upon what happened yesterday, do you think Donald J. Trump will be able to get a fair trial?
No chance. There's no chance of a fair trial here.
There's no chance of a fair trial here. I've tried one case in my whole career, and I didn't get a chance there either. But listen to why she thinks he doesn't get a fair trial.
Remember, just because it's a jury doesn't mean that the judge can't sway them to go one way or another or make things difficult so that jury selection is impossible. That's what's happening yesterday. They spent the first few hours doing things that probably should have been done before a jury was waiting. That discourages jurors to want to sit on a panel. And
first of all, nobody wants to sit on a fucking jury anyway. I mean, everybody really, I mean, this the very few people that say, oh, great, I get to not go to work and I get to not make any money and I get to go sit at the courthouse all fucking day until they call me and eat shitty food and get paid $15. Nobody wants to sit on a jury. But it's your civic duty. And it's a solemn duty. And the jurors that I've seen take their duty very seriously. Because I've seen juries. I've seen, and Miss Haba, I guarantee you hasn't tried many, if any, cases. Well, she tried the one, and lost miserably after the good lawyer backed out. But let's hear what else she has to say.
Then they come in and they're told that they can't get off from Passover if they observe it, and that you're going to have no break other than Wednesday in the middle of the week.
Most juries don't get Wednesday off. Most juries don't get a break. But I think it's going to be a 4 to 6 week trial, if that. So it is a chunk out of your life, no question about it.
So that messes up everybody's schedules, and people don't want to sit for that. That's why we saw half of the jurors say that they could not be impartial and want to walk.
She has no idea. She's not sitting in the courtroom. She's not a trial lawyer. She's a transactional lawyer. She does some fucking family law. I mean, give me a break. You know what? I would chew my arm off if I had to do family law. Family law is difficult. It's full of rancor, emotion, and dysfunction. So put me in a family law courtroom and you watch me just chew my arm off to get away. If you remember during during her trial, she was having trouble after trouble after trouble trying to get evidence in because she doesn't know what the fuck she's doing. But let's see what else she has to say.
So what's your reaction, Alina, to the judge saying, we understand that former President Trump wants to go to the Supreme Court for his other case. It's not going to happen. Might not be able to take off one day to see his son graduate high school. Is it...
Okay, let me tell you something. You are charged with a fucking crime. You are charged with 34 fucking counts, all felonies. Do you think that the judge it's respectful to the jury to let you go to your son's graduation? Too bad. Those are your choices. And you need to be there for the Supreme Court argument? Are you a indispensable party? No, you don't, because you don't get up and speak. You don't do shit. You just sit there and no. So when you're in trial, you're in trial. And guess what happens if you don't show? And this goes for everybody, not just Trump. If you don't show up, they get a warrant out for your arrest. And the judge has admonished him, if you don't show up for court, like you can't just get up and walk out like he did in the E. Jean Carroll case. Remember, he got pissed off and he just got up and stormed out of there. Well, you can't do that in criminal court. Why can't you do that in criminal court? Because the judge has you by the balls. You don't show up, you go to jail. And guess what? While you're sitting in your jail cell, if you're being, disruptive and uncooperative, they can have the trial without you. So it's nothing to really mess around with. It's a normal court proceeding. It's a normal trial. And it's just an extraordinary individual who it happens to be against.
Standard for judges to turn requests like that down, or do they make those sorts of accommodations?
Well, in the one trial that I had, she hasn't tried any cases.
No, accommodations are always made by judges. That's why you go over the schedule. If there wasn't such a rigid schedule, you wouldn't be doing that in practice. You go over it, you look at holidays, you look at things of that nature. Remember something about this, Carly. This case has been investigated for 8 years. It wasn't brought by Cy Vance, and now DA Bragg is bringing this case after the president had announced that he was running for office again. There's no coincidences here. So now he wants to rush it because November 2024 is an election, and he's probably hoping he's got this in the...
When did he actually file these charges? And you talk about rushing it? These have been pending for about a year. So taking a year to get to a courtroom is not that big a deal.
Bag, even though it's on a completely discredited witnesses that we know have perjured themselves. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, that's an accommodation that...
It's based on witnesses that have perjured. You think that they're going to rely on the witness's testimony alone? No, of course they're not. What they're going to rely upon is the witness being backed up, by, like Michael Cohen, for example, by recordings and documents. You would never take his word for anything. Just like Alan Weisselberg, who was just sentenced to 5 months for what? For fucking perjury. And that's his CFO.
That would normally be...
She talked about venue, and Trump talks about, they've selected the second worst district in the country, or whatever he said. Do you know where venue is? Where is venue? Where is venue? Venue, first of all, is an element of any crime, because, like, if the murder happened in Alaska, you can't charge that out in Minnesota. You just can't do it. So the venue is where the crime occurred, and that's an element of the crime. So it has to be prosecuted in the jurisdiction, in the venue in which it occurred. And Ms. Haba talks about, that they selected these different venues for the prejudice that they inflict upon the defendant. Not true. It has to happen where it happened. Now, they could have been in the Southern District of New York. It could have been there. But it still would have been in Manhattan. It would still have been right the fuck there. And you would have the same jury pool, regardless. Maybe a little bit more expanded jury pool federally. But I am fascinated by this because it is a criminal trial. And... do I want to see Trump prosecuted? I don't know. I mean, here's another video about Trump. He sat outside the courthouse the other day, and this is what he said. I mean, he starts talking about the elements of the crime, and he admits he admits it in open court. So you can see his lawyers are pulling their fucking hair out. And why are they pulling their hair out? They're pulling their hair out because he should not be talking about the facts of the case, and he did that right outside. And the other thing is, Alvin Bragg filed a motion about him being held in contempt of court for violating the gag order. And gag orders are common. They're common not just in this case, but they're common in every case. Because they don't want people intimidating the jury. They don't want people talking about the facts. But what do you do if a guy like Trump, violates the court order? What sanction? Do you give him like $500? That ain't going to do anything. $1,000? That ain't going to do anything. $1 million? Is that too excessive? Do you put him in jail? Judge has a very difficult decision on what he should do if he finds that Trump has violated the gag order. The gag orders and other orders are like conditions of release. And what I mean by that is when, say Michael and I were fighting in the yard, over a samurai sword, and he was wearing my kilt and nothing else. And so we got in a big fight, and so I punch him and whatever. I get arrested for domestic assault. And one of the things that happens when I go to court, the judge will say, as conditions of your release, we don't want you having any more fights with Michael Rivers, oiled up in the front yard with a samurai sword. I'm just kidding about that. But we don't, in other words, we don't want you to have contact with the person that you've assaulted or you're alleged to have assaulted. We don't, there's all kinds of other conditions: no contact with minors, no drinking and driving, or no drinking alcohol, no drugs, random testing. And in this case, there's a gag order, and that's part of the conditions of release. And so if you violate those, you go back to court, and the judge can hold you in contempt and put you in jail. Is that going to happen? Probably not likely, because the backlash of that is just too great, really, honestly. But the jurors in this case are really becoming scared. They're scared of the Trumpsters because they are intimidated. They, people have been, their personal information has gotten out, and so that's a real fear, and that's what the gag order is. And some of it isn't even by Trump. Some of it's reporters doing this shit, and you can't do that. Oh, that's dovetails with right what I was saying. I didn't even know you put that up. So Judge Merchan, he warned Trump on Tuesday that he would not put up with any intimidation of jurors in this courtroom, accusing the presumptive GOP presidential nominee of making comments during the questioning of one juror. This is what the judge said. I won't tolerate that. I won't have any jurors intimidated in this courtroom. I want to make that crystal clear. And, he's got the power of locking him up. And that is a real power, and I think Trump has just been dancing on the head of a pin, pushing here, pushing there, and because if he wins his trial, he wins. But if he loses his trial, it's going to be because nothing was fair, and the whole trial was rigged, and everything's stacked against him, which is just all BS. This is the same procedure for anybody. All Alvin Bragg has to do to get this to a jury is establish probable cause. Once you get, and so that's been litigated, whether there was probable cause, they filed motions to dismiss. So that's all been litigated, and he had a fair opportunity to be heard. Now we're in front of a jury. Now the standard for the jury is a lot different. Now it's beyond a reasonable doubt. And the antics that you have in the courtroom, you can't do some of the shit that he wants to do. Literally, this just in, all 12 jurors have now been selected. So they've got 12 jurors, and they probably need, I don't know, I think that you'd probably want a half a dozen alternates. You want a lot of alternates in this case. 2 reasons. One, such a high-profile case, people could all of a sudden find out who you are and get intimidated. That's why I don't really believe in sequestering a jury. That means holding them in a specific spot until the case is over. But in this case, I kind of do, and I don't think they're being sequestered, but I'm not sure. But you need a lot of jurors because it's going to be a long trial and it's a high-profile trial. So a lot of things could happen. And guess what? If you have 13 jurors and all of a sudden 2 get sick, it's a mistrial. And then you got to start all over again. So this has just been our little breakdown and update on the Trump trial situation going on in Manhattan. And keep in mind, my political feelings and fairness, unfairness, he's got good lawyers. He's got really, really top-notch lawyers. So Alvin Bragg's got his work cut out for him. But it is a document case. And now you have this recent admission from Trump right outside the courtroom. And you're going to have a lot of evidence. And there's 3 main sources of the payment of that money. One is Stormy Daniels, one is Karen McDougal, and the other one is his doorman. Not everybody can. What do you see here? You see a fucking pattern, don't you? Or don't you? Or is it just part of the deep state trying to get that Biden DOJ to go? Oh, by the way, Biden has nothing to do with this, by the way. He keeps talking about the Biden DOJ. This is the Biden trial, blah, blah. He's an excellent marketer. He's a good dog and pony show guy, but it just doesn't have anything to do with nothing. This is Alvin Bragg, and maybe Alvin Bragg is your George Soros funded prosecutor, Democrat. So the fuck what? Even if he is, let's say he is. Let's say he is super biased against Trump. And let's say the reason he's bringing this case is because he doesn't want to get Donald Trump elected, or he doesn't want him to run, or whatever. Prosecutions are by their nature political. The types of cases that a prosecutor's office goes after are political. But that doesn't mean that the evidence that he presents in court have any different rules than a normal case. You know, he's got top-notch lawyers, and they couldn't get this case tossed out. And it's not because the judge is biased. It's because there was probable cause. It's a very low standard. It's easier to get a criminal case to a jury than it is to take money out of the hands of a juror in a civil case. It just is. And unlike Alina Haba, I've actually tried a lot of cases. Tried like 12 cases in the last 2 years, won 9 out of the 12, and one really huge case. So, well, several huge cases, but one really big case. I know what I'm talking about, civilly and criminally. And all I got to tell you is this is going to be fun to watch. You know, it just, for me, it's fascinating. Whether it was Trump or somebody else. But the fact that it's Trump makes it 10 times more exciting. In fact, one of the jurors said, Trump is interesting because he gets people riled up on both sides like nobody can. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, your board-certified criminal defense lawyer. Make sure you subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, sign up for Patreon, and if you're a Patreon subscriber, your hat is on the way. If you've given us your address, we're going to be running out of hats, so we're going to have to order some. So if you're in the first batch, we'll get to you, but it'll be on the way shortly, so you'll see it soon. See you next time here on Criminal Lawyer React. In front of the school children, he says he only likes to date white women, wanted the school children to shave their head, that he intended to put them in jail if they misbehaved, and they would lock them up in cages. It's one thing to have your own company and barcode orders and be rude, and if the adults want to, deal with that, great. But it's quite another when you involve children.
Jesus Christ, Hitler, yay! Third party, sponsor that, nigga.
Jesus Christ, Hitler, and yay. Now, the school was physically locked from the outside during the school day. Well, that way, you're guaranteed that you're locked in, I guess. Students weren't allowed to go outside. I mean, why would you need any sun anyway, Defendant West reportedly did not allow no chairs, so children had to sit on cushions and sit on the floor and they had to eat on the floor. Who the f*** would send their kid to this school? Classes could not take place on the second floor, as West reportedly did not want children and staff going upstairs since he was reportedly afraid of stairs. What the fuck? Are you kidding me? Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminally Reacts. I'm your board-certified criminal defense lawyer. That's exactly what I am. And why am I board-certified? Because I've taken 2 exams. I had enough trial experience to call myself an expert in the area, or a specialist in the area of criminal trial work and criminal law. So what that means is just that I've got a lot of experience. I've been doing this over 25 years, 26 years to be exact. And I go to court and I try cases. I don't just sit there and hold your hand and write a passport to prison. That's not what I do. But I'm not doing this alone. We have the content genius here, Michael Rivers, behind the camera, behind the ideas. Today we're reacting to Kanye West. Kanye West, now you talk about a character. I'm scratching my head at this guy. But before we get to Kanye, yay, West. Before we get to Mr. West, I want to put a shout out, and we got another wedding invitation to Mita and Zachary. So they send us a little note. It says, Bruce, we watch you more than we'd like to admit. Why wouldn't you want to admit that? You got to admit that because this is infotainment here. You're our favorite. Thank you. Amita and Zach. So we're waiting for the formal invitation. Hopefully we can make it. We'll give you an RSVP if we can, but really appreciate it and congratulations. Now, before we get to Kanye, let's talk about why we're here and who our sponsor is. eForms.com is our sponsor. Go to eForms.com if you need any kind of legal form or document. The reason you do that is so you don't have to hire a high-priced guy like me. We did it for Grandma. We got power of attorney for Grandma when she started to start her own school and, denying these kids to put them in cages and making sure that they eat off the floor. That's what we do with Grandma because Grandma's not really competent to do those kind of things. So you go to eforms.com, whether it's a power of attorney or a bill of sale or a rental agreement, business agreement, any kind of legal document that you need that protects you so you don't even have to go to court, go to eforms.com. Okay. Now, Kanye West is being sued. He's being sued by Cecilia Haley and Checkary Byers, and then also Trevor Phillips. These are former employees for the Donda Academy. First of all, let's talk about Kanye for a second. Kanye, how do we put this? I think he would be the absolute most difficult client to have. He thinks he's a king. He's got all kinds of fanciful ideas. He likes to show up with a mask on, so you can't even see his face. He's definitely a different cat. Does his own thing. That's all well and good until you start involving other people, until you're messing with children. So let's just kind of go over what the causes of action from these former employees. We've got retaliation, violation of labor code. Retaliation. So in other words, they reported him and he fucked with them. Discrimination based upon race. And here's the deal. He didn't like black people. He goes after the black people and super nice to the white people, according to these complaints. Violation of labor code, unlawful withholding of wages. My understanding of the withholding of wages claim is Adidas, withdrew, and then all of a sudden his bank held their funds, and they weren't able to pay any people for a while. Violation of labor code, waiting time penalties. Violation of labor code. So what else? Inaccurate wage statements. And then you've got for the next one, it's discrimination and violation of the Fair Employment and Housing Act. 2 counts of that. Retaliation again. Failing to take all reasonable steps to prevent discrimination, harassment, and retaliation in violation of the Fair Employment and Housing Act. Violation of a labor code whistleblower. And then violation of labor code violation. There's like several counts of that. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Breach of an express oral contract to pay wages at a certain amount. He was offering like $100 an hour for one of the employees. So he's got all these different companies. He's got Yeezy, he's got Peasy, Speezy, Jeezy. I don't know what the fuck but he's got a bunch of different companies. He puts out music, he puts out clothing, and I don't know how he makes so much money. He's a billionaire. Kanye's a billionaire. I mean, he's a big deal. And I know a lot of people like him and whatever. But imagine working with the guy. I mean, let's just take a look and see what it would be like to work with Kanye.
Your trainer, hardly pass you that, Jay-Z. You know what I'm saying? And they hang around these niggas just for the money or some Mike Rubin shit. I slap the shit out of Mike Rubin. I see that.
Could you imagine working for the guy?
This sort of shit. Don't tell me about my fucking political opinion. I made more money to show you that money ain't nothing. It's our money, nigga. It's our country. It's like stolen from us. It's pyramids, nigga. It's pyramids. It's St. Louis, nigga, Missouri. They stole it. All the shit. America just the latest bitch that been ran through so many times. The Greeks hit her. Mansa Musa hit her. We had her. The Indians and shit. The motherfucking pilgrims. It's the Jews. They dress the same. It's the same shit. That's the story. They put us in the school. The Rothschilds. I know Jay-Z back here like, they go down now. I've been here for a year.
Are you following this? Honestly, I mean, it's just the rant of somebody with bipolar. Honestly, I don't know if he's got bipolar or not, but I mean, go through with this thread. I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
Who got the hospitals? These are Zion. This is what I'm trying to tell you. Jesus Christ, Hitler, yay. Third party, sponsor that, nigga. Yeah. Bring your sponsorships to that. Because it's going to be niggas that feel exactly like me. I don't give
Jesus Christ, Hitler, and yay. I mean, these are the rants. The rants of somebody who's not well. Now, that's all well and good. You know, when you have your clothing store, you want to fuck with your employees, you want to do that kind of stuff. That's just all well and good.
Nigga, don't say me shit. Nigga, I'm by myself in this motherfucking room, nigga. Everybody shut the fuck up. Hey, shut the fuck up. Let me tell you something right now. Just the fact that you ain't listening to me, Ain't none of y'all niggas with me. I'm by my fucking self. Because ain't none of y'all niggas stand up for me. Ain't nobody stop. And shut up. Be quiet before you get exiled. Like so I'm saying is, no.
So he says, she says, you're not God. And he says, be quiet before you get exiled. And then on the other video, you heard him say, Jesus, Hitler, yay. Now, at some point, when somebody shows you who you are, as Maya Angelou says, believe them, But, in the Phillips case, Phillips is one of his employees at this Dondo school. And this is basically what he's saying. Saying that he treated black employees worse than white employees, screamed and berated employees while he never raised his voice or his tone at white staff, spewed hate, professes anti-Semitic tropes and lies, threatening LGBTQ community. In other words, he hates Jews. Says he's God, as you just heard. He says he's God. I mean, he had an operation to grow cotton. And he didn't make the white people grow cotton. Made threats to Jewish people. Says, I'm a bit slippy, but when I wake up, I'm going to go DEFCON 3 on the Jewish people. He really doesn't like the Jews. Lost leases to 2 properties due to anti-Semitism. Expected everyone to work 60 to 80 hours a week. I don't really have that much of a problem, but with promises of $100 an hour, but didn't pay it. Preached to his staff obscenities such as, the Jews are out to get me, and the Jews are stealing all my money. You just heard he talked about the hospitals and who owns the hospitals. In front of the school children, he says he only likes to date white women. Wanted the school children to shave their head, that he intended to put them in jail if they misbehaved, and they would lock them up in cages. It's one thing to have your own company and barcode orders and be rude, and if the adults want to, deal with that, great. But it's quite another when you involve children. I'll tell you more about that, because there are regulations that you have to adhere to. But he says Hitler was a good person. Jewish people are bad, and they run America. And Chinese people run them. The Zionist Jews are out to get me. They are a part of human sex trafficking. The Jews are working with Adidas to freeze up my money and to try to make me broke. The Jews can't stop me. Adidas can't stop me. I will be the richest person in the world. You know what we call that? Those are delusions of grandeur. That's the product of mental illness. Or just an asshole, one of the two. But you have... Let me just read you some stuff from the other lawsuit, from Haley and Byers. Now, Haley had prior experience as a juvenile justice officer, so worked with kids before. So that's actually would be a good hire. But the plaintiffs, that means Haley and Byers, were the only female African-American teachers. They noted multiple safety and health violations. The Donut Academy doesn't have a properly disciplinary system, as students were subject to being severe bullying. Students slapping each other. Didn't have any janitorial services. No janitorial services. Did not have a school nurse on staff. Did not follow nutritional guidelines. And why is that? It's because they only fed them fucking sushi. Sushi. Their bill was like $10,000 a month in sushi. Tell me what kids really like sushi. Not many. They like peanut butter and jelly. Didn't have any security precautions. No cleaning staff. No cleaning products containing chemicals, so teachers were only allowed to clean with acid water and microfiber towels. There were no trash cans outside of the classroom or the kitchen. I mean, how is he qualified to have any kind of school whatsoever? No protocol surrounding students with medical needs, like no EpiPen, that kind of shit. I mean, there's a reason you have a school nurse. When you're in their care, when you're in the care, custody, and control of the school, they're responsible for you, and they're responsible for what happened. Students were allowed to be picked up from campus by strangers. Fuck. Yeah, I'm going to send my kid over to Kanye's class. I don't really give a shit who picks him up. He'll be back next Thursday. I mean, come on. Let's see. Parents would bring their newborns to school, and that's not distracting, is it? And pass around the infants to others, including teachers. Well, geez, anybody want a communicable disease from an infant? Let's see. Otherwise, strict rules and requirements that the school had no choice but to adhere to, such as didn't allow crossword puzzles or coloring sheets. Classes could not take place on the second floor, as West reportedly did not want children and staff going upstairs since he was reportedly afraid of stairs. What the fuck? Are you kidding me? Defendant did not want children to use forks or utensils. Probably because he's afraid of forks. Defendant was required West required that cups and bowls be the color gray. Defendant West did not allow color in the classroom or artwork hung on the walls. Teachers and children were not allowed to wear jewelry because Defendant West reportedly did not like jewelry. Defendant West reportedly did not allow children no chairs, so children had to sit on cushions and sit on the floor and they had to eat on the floor. Everyone was who the fuck would send their kid to this school? I mean, who would work for this guy, and who would? I mean, you'd have to be kind of nuts to it's Kanye West. I'm going to send my kid to, and he'll become this. I think it was billed originally as like an art school, like a performance art school. Everyone was required to wear all black from head to toe. So were they when they had that cult where they all wore Nikes and then they all drank the Kool-Aid. Yeah, remember Heaven's Gate? Heaven's Gate, they all wore Nikes and they all wore the same outfit. I mean, that's what it reminds me of. Now, the school was physically locked from the outside during the school day. Well, that way, you're guaranteed that you're locked in, I guess. Students weren't allowed to go outside. I mean, why would you need any sun anyway, And why would you need to play on a swing set? Oh, why? Because he was afraid of swing sets and they didn't allow swing sets. Students had to eat their lunch on the floor and there were no tables. Because tables are scary too. But here's the main thing is that when, you have all these violations, because, schools have to adhere to, I don't even think they're still in business if I'm not mistaken. I hope they're not. But when you have a school, you have to adhere to certain regulations. The lunches have to meet certain dietary requirements. The facility has to meet certain requirements, like you have to have chairs and tables and shit. Think about, you send your kid there, they don't fucking clean up, because all they have is microfiber towels and maybe a little acid water, so they don't clean the floors, and then you're forced to eat on those floors, the healthy meal of sushi on a dirty floor. So, but here's why this is a problem, because when these plaintiffs started complaining about it, he retaliated against them. And throughout the entirety of the employer, paychecks were ultimately were untimely or inaccurate. Plaintiffs' paychecks would often be approximately $1,800 to $2,700 per pay period. Plaintiffs complained to Donda Academy about their failure to pay them wages, and they retaliated against them. They were terminated. Plaintiffs formed the belief they were terminated as retaliation for their complaints. So, let's see. There are several students with bullying issues that remain unaddressed. Plaintiff buyers complained that the students who became violent should be expelled from Donda Academy, and those needs weren't met, or those concerns weren't addressed. So, and so they're suing for an unspecified amount of damages plus punitive damages. What are punitive damages? You remember the E. Jean Carroll case where he got like $60 million in punities? Punitive damages are not compensatory. They are damages meant to send a message, to punish the defendant and send a message publicly, basically. And if you just give like $5,000 to a guy like Kanye West, who's a billionaire, in punitive damages, you don't really send that message. So if any of these people are, part of the LGBTQ community, and Kanye's, you hear he makes all kinds of things about Jews and gays, and he's making comments like that. Well, they're protected class. So similarly, if you're African American, you can be discriminated against by another African American based upon your race. And if that's going on, those are real problems. Now, how would I feel if I was representing Kanye? I would actually probably love it, to be honest with you, because I think it would be so funny to represent him just because he's so crazy. You know, he had something going on a while back. So around the time that, my office partner is a pretty well-known lawyer. His name is Joe Friedberg. And around the time the George Floyd stuff was going on, Kanye was making all kinds of problems, and he was having trouble with Adidas, I think, at the time. And so Joe offered, he somehow got his cell phone number and texted him. And the minute he said his name was Friedberg, Kanye said something like, "You're a Jew and I don't want to talk to you," or something like that. He's just got to be the most difficult person. And by the way, Kanye, if you're going to watch this, I'm Roman Catholic, so I think we're good there. If you want me to help you out, I'm not really soliciting you for a client. But it would be fun because, number one, he's got a shit ton of money. And you could do all kinds of creative things, legally speaking, that you couldn't do otherwise. But he still would be, a loose cannon. You let him testify. What's going to happen? And I don't know what's going to happen with these two lawsuits. Real damages are probably not that high, to be honest with you. They're probably, for you and I, they'd be significant. But for him, they're not going to be that much. I mean, if they'd be $1 million, I'd be shocked. When you look at Kanye West, and we're going to, show you, well, when you look at Kanye West and his antics are absolutely fine just out in the public domain. Let the market dictate what's happening to him. But when you all of a sudden involve children and you have a school that you're supposed to be doing X, Y, and Z, and you're not doing it, that's a real problem. Some of this could even be criminal neglect. I just don't know how he gets by that. So if any of this, I mean, this stuff could be totally bullshit. I have no idea. I doubt it, because you can see how he is. He thinks he's God, and he calls himself God. You got Jesus, Hitler, and Ye. I mean, what the fuck is that? Honestly, I think it can be universally known that Hitler was not a nice guy. Make sure that you don't treat your Jewish brothers and sisters like Kanye does. I have a lot of Jewish friends, and they're all fantastic people. And also, don't discriminate. Be nice to everybody. It's a really good rule to live by. So make sure you follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter. Now, every Patreon member, we're going to give you a hat. So if you're a Patreon member, get me your address through the Patreon system. And as soon as we get your address, we'll mail you a hat. Okay? And we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.